privileged to have Habitat actually, headquartered here. We must demonstrate, we must be almost like the role model. One thing we are doing is, as we do our development, we are doing it by way of corridors. Like we have the Lapset corridor, which starts from Lamu Port, going all the way to Moyale, on one side to Ethiopia, the other side goes to Southern Sudan. Along those, we have all those what we are calling resort cities. Now, that has to do with a lot of habitat issues. And those are matters which we must address from this perspective. So there's a lot to learn from this Habitat 3.
We have a number of programs in the State Department of Housing and Urban Development which actually respond to the issues of infrastructure, the issues of housing, the issues of even slum upgrading and informal settlements, improvement in informal settlements. So in all of this, we are addressing the issues that are being raised in Habitat.
Therefore, it's an expectation of everybody that during the Habitat 3, major decisions will come out.
Kenya's urban development sector is going through unprecedented transformation, marked by mega investment in infrastructure and a new wave of modeling that is springing forth techno-cities and germinating sustainably planned urban spaces where there were none. The country is embracing urbanization as a formidable opportunity to foster sustainable development within its towns and villages. Kenya has assumed devolved system of governance in order to decentralize resources to the grassroots. Indeed, devolution has brought in a revolution of its kind. The architecture of urban governance and management has shifted from a more autonomous local authority structure to a decentralized regime. Devolved governance has renewed Kenya's efforts towards cities for all as it foregrounds people's participation in all public decision-making processes. This has significantly built a sense of ownership and responsibility among rights holders and duty bearers.
Urbanization is unstoppable. It will happen, and the challenge is not to stop it. The challenge is how to ensure urban areas are properly managed, are properly planned, and are properly provided for.
Kenya's integrated approach to development has seen the establishment of clear territorial and administrative boundaries, as well as governance structures that enhance a seamless flow of duties. At the same time, renewed planning attention is being directed to the principal towns of the counties.
Just even by the mere structuring of the ministry, it tells that we are alive to the issues of urbanization. Because when you talk urbanization, you have to think of transportation. When you talk of urbanization, you have to think infrastructure. When you talk urbanization, you have to think housing. And when you speak urbanization, you have to think urban development.
The greatest win for Kenya is the shared vision between the national government and the county governments, a vision that has found convergence within the private sector and the civil society circles, a vision of cities for all. Kenya's transformation is happening at a time when global attention is focused on defining a new urban agenda through the United Nations Conference on Housing and Sustainable Urban Development, the Habitat 3 process. Habitat 3 conference has been preceded by a number of national, regional and international interactions between state and non-state actors. Such meetings have spurred national conversations on the subject of human habitat as a component of global governance and as a means of realizing human dignity.
Urbanization helps us towards development. Most of the income generation comes from urban areas, so it's an area we really need to embrace.
Kenya's Ministry of Transport, Infrastructure, Housing and Urban Development has been leading the country's participation in the Habitat 3 process. The ministry has championed tremendous infrastructural development that is changing the face of Kenya's urban and rural spaces. Admirably, the country's national and county development plans are in tandem with the commitment made toward Habitat 3.
And even as we come back from Quito with an agenda of new urban areas and human settlements, we are confident that we shall work together. And the good thing is that we have full support of every level of this government to move with the Habitat 3 agenda.
While staying alive to her citizens' needs, the Kenyan government has rolled out various initiatives to ensure adequate housing, water, sanitation, solid waste management, among other services.
We have a Kenya Informal Settlements Improvement Program, which is trying to address the matter of ownership so that security of tenure is addressed by either giving group titles or a form of tenure, which will then give way to more permanent housing development.
Deliberate socio-economic surveys continue to be conducted in order to design strategies toward effective, efficient, and sustainable basic service provision for all. Kenya has an annual need of 250,000 housing units, with over 70% of our population living in rental houses.
We realize as government that however much you like to do, we must engage development partners, but also more importantly the private sector.
To cultivate sustainable housing provision, the government, alongside development partners, are focusing on improving social housing, institutional housing, and continued slum prevention and slum upgrading programs, which offer modern yet affordable housing that is rented on community prices.
And I urge you to continue this battle, to continue this process, this peaceful battle, because there's a lot to be done. And I think that as this is very important for the improving of Kibra, it's also something that needs to help us to scale up and go to the more ambitious projects for Nairobi.
The government's efforts have been fortified by the private sector, which continues to provide housing units, building materials, and financial facilities, especially for the middle income and high-end markets. The reduction in bank lending rates from about 20% to 14.5% interest is expected to attract more Kenyans to mortgage facilities. The public and private sector partnership has been largely complemented by civil society organizations' innovative approaches and viable models for basic service delivery, especially to the majority disadvantaged urban residents. The civil society has helped to consolidate different forms of awareness that exist within the people and direct them to well-planned neighborhoods. Noteworthy are delegated water management system, sustainable energy provision, incremental housing models, and community waste management, among other innovations. On the Civil Society Urban Development Platform CSUDP, collective dialogue has been sustained and enhanced through local urban forums where engagements happen in a formidable knowledge-guided manner that makes sense of dialogues and public participation toward forming a proactive level of negotiation with the different governments.
It's about ensuring that the masses in the urban areas get an equal hearing and get a voice and get a space within which they can therefore feel the mode of engagement with their government is leveled, and they're able to then have an understanding that as we move together, we are moving in the same direction and not in counter directions.
Such discourses have informed policy instruments, alternative budget processes, and other concessions, especially within the counties.
The informal sector should not be left out. This is a clear agenda that should be brought out because it contributes, it has been shown, studies have shown that it contributes a lot to GDP.
Young Kenyans now should go in full blast, acquire the necessary knowledge, and get the experiences. And the UN Habitat in Nairobi becomes as one of those elements that will be able to stimulate them to be able to plan around, to be able to invest opportunities that are available.
Our urban futures and our urban models are so generous in terms of the potential that we can get from them. But it can produce enough for the needs of each one of us.
The continued complementarity and consultations are expected to catalyze equity, dignity, inclusion, democracy, and participation in the urban space.
The poor do not need to be a project. The poor majority need to be part and parcel of the conception of the urban reality that brings prosperity.
Diversity and inclusivity remain key considerations in employment opportunities. There is also improved access to public offices and spaces, as well as expanded greener spaces for recreation across the country. Entrepreneurship is at its peak, with the youth, women, and the disabled securing major tenders in public and private procurement bids. There is ongoing extensive research, financial investment, and legal reforms to enhance disaster management and environmental protection. Amid the progressive opportunities lie challenges, including high cost of land, poor maintenance culture among the public, to mention a few. Such hurdles are being tackled from a multi-sectoral approach that thrives on multi-stakeholder consultations.
We have a good moment for us as a country to progress. We have moved to a middle-income country. We need to demonstrate that by deed, by creating economies that work.
The government has been lauded for the extensive inclusion of stakeholders like the civil society in formulating and reviewing legal instruments that guide urban development in terms of construction, maintenance, disaster management, demolition and evictions, among others. While riding on the new urban agenda, Kenya desires to build and sustain inclusive cities that are well planned in management as a developmental legacy for her future generations.
So for Kenya, it's a huge opportunity, provided that we're able to arrange and make sure that the infrastructure development is in tandem with a wider vision of Kenya's Vision 2030, and also is in tandem now with the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. So we are in sync in as far as the development agenda is concerned.
Kenya is on the right track toward creating and maintaining inclusivity that would ensure that all city inhabitants are able to produce just, safe, healthy, accessible, affordable, resilient and sustainable cities and human settlements to foster prosperity and quality of life for all.
For us, the new urban agenda should be not just a new wish list, but a framework of how to execute, to deliver an urban agenda.
So there's a lot to learn from this Habitat 3. And so for us, we're excited to participate, to be part of it. And I think the entire global family should be able to actually work together to make sure that we achieve common objectives, because we all live in a global village.